Pastor Emmanuel Okoro was the kind of man everyone in Grace Sanctuary Church admired. Young, vibrant, and full of the Holy Spirit, his sermons could make sinners weep and saints rejoice. He had built a reputation as a righteous man, a preacher of truth, and a warrior against sin. But his faith was about to be tested in a way he never imagined. On a fateful Friday night, as he drove home from a revival program, a heavy downpour made it impossible to see the road ahead. The streetlights flickered, and the traffic was unusually sparse. Just as he was about to turn into his estate, he noticed a woman standing by the roadside, drenched from head to toe. Her red dress clung to her skin, and her high heels were sinking into the muddy ground. She was shivering, hugging herself tightly, clearly stranded. Pastor Emmanuel felt a tug in his heart. Wasn't it his duty as a man of God to help those in need? With a deep breath, he pulled over and rolled down his window. "Sister, do you need help?" he asked. The woman hesitated before stepping closer. Her face was stunning, but her eyes held a sorrow he couldn't ignore. "Please, sir, I just need a ride. The rain, I have nowhere to go." Something about her voice made his heart race. There was both desperation and mystery in it. He hesitated, remembering the dangers of picking up strangers at night. But the Good Samaritan in him won. "Get in." As she slid into the passenger seat, the smell of cheap perfume mixed with the wet fabric of her dress. "Thank you, sir," she murmured. "My name is Anita." He nodded but kept his eyes on the road. "Where do you live?" She let out a bitter laugh. "Nowhere permanent. Tonight I was supposed to meet a client at the hotel, but he never showed up. So I was stranded." Pastor Emmanuel's grip on the steering wheel tightened. A prostitute? His heart pounded. This was not just any woman in distress. This was a woman of the night. "You're a hookup girl?" he asked hesitantly. Anita turned to him, her eyes filled with something between defiance and shame. "Yes, and I know what you're thinking. A man like you shouldn't even be talking to a woman like me." Silence filled the car. He should have been repulsed. He should have told her to get out. But instead, something deep inside him stirred. Compassion, pity, or perhaps a curiosity he didn't dare acknowledge. "I'm not here to judge you," he finally said. "Just tell me where to drop you off." Anita hesitated before whispering, "Anywhere but the streets." Pastor Emmanuel sighed. Knowing that this night was about to take an unexpected turn, one that would change his life forever, Pastor Emmanuel sat behind his mahogany desk in his well-furnished office. His Bible open before him, but his mind was elsewhere. It had been 2 weeks since his shocking marriage to Anita, the woman everyone whispered about, the ex-hookup girl. His congregation was in turmoil, the church elders unsettled, and he could feel the judgmental stares every Sunday. Anita, on the other hand, struggled with her new reality. Gone were the nights of easy money, wild parties, and fake affection. In their place was a silent, cold house filled with scriptures and the constant reminder that she was now a pastor's wife. She barely knew how to pray, and the church women treated her like a virus they didn't want to catch. If she dared to smile, it was met with disapproval. If she dressed too modestly, they whispered that she was pretending. One evening, as she walked into the church for a midweek service, she overheard 2 women speaking in hushed tones. "She's a disgrace to this ministry," Sister Grace muttered. "How can Pastor Emmanuel think he can make a wife out of a woman like that?" "I heard she used to bring rich men to hotels," another chimed in. "Can you imagine? How can she even think she belongs here?" Anita's hands clenched into fists. Anger, pain, and frustration surged within her, but she swallowed them all. She wasn't going to break. Not here. Not now. Later that night, in the quiet of their home, she finally confronted Emmanuel. "Why did you do it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do what?" he asked, looking up from his Bible. "Marry me. You knew this would happen. You knew they'd never accept me." Emmanuel closed the Bible slowly, exhaling deeply. "Because God asked me to." She scoffed. God? Did he come down and tell you that personally? Yes, he said simply. And I obeyed. Anita turned away, shaking her head. I'm tired, Emmanuel. I don't belong here. This is not my world. You do belong here, he said firmly. You just don't see it yet. Tears stung her eyes. And if I never do, then I will wait, he said, his voice filled with unshakable conviction. Anita didn't know whether to admire his faith or curse it. But one thing was certain. This was just the beginning of her battle. And she wasn't sure she had the strength to fight it. The news of Pastor Emmanuel's marriage to Anita sent shockwaves through the church and the entire community. Some saw it as an act of grace and redemption, while others whispered in outrage. The elders of the church, led by Deacon Martins, summoned Pastor Emmanuel for an emergency meeting. Pastor, you are a man of God. How could you bring a woman like that into your home, let alone our congregation? Deacon Martin's voice was laced with frustration. Emmanuel remained calm. She is no different from any of us. God's grace is for everyone, regardless of their past. But she was a prostitute. Do you know how many men in this town have been with her? What kind of example are you setting? Another elder interjected. Emmanuel took a deep breath. The example of Christ. Didn't he dine with sinners? Didn't he forgive the woman caught in adultery? The room fell silent, but their expressions showed disagreement. We'll pray on this matter, Deacon Martins finally said. But understand, Pastor, not everyone will accept this. Back at home, Anita felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. She had expected judgment, but facing it was harder than she imagined. Even when she accompanied Emmanuel to Sunday service, the stares and hushed whispers were unbearable. Women clutched their husbands a little tighter, and some people refused to greet her. After service, Anita sat in the car, her eyes brimming with tears. Emmanuel, maybe this was a mistake. I don't belong here. He held her hand. You belong with me. God does not make mistakes. But as the days passed, the opposition grew stronger. Some members threatened to leave the church. A few even stopped attending services. One evening, while Anita was at the market, a woman named Mama Nkechi confronted her. You may have fooled Pastor Emmanuel, but you will never fool us. We know who you are. You are a disgrace. Leave while you still can. Anita clenched her fists, fighting back tears. She had changed. She wanted a new life. But would the world ever let her forget her past? As she walked home, she realized something chilling. A dark figure was watching her from across the street. The past she thought she had left behind might not be done with her yet. Life in the church parsonage was nothing like Anita had imagined. Gone were the flashy outfits and heavy makeup. In their place were long skirts, simple blouses, and a routine of early morning prayers. At first, she struggled, feeling like an imposter in a world that didn't belong to her. Pastor Emmanuel was patient, guiding her gently, but no amount of kindness could drown out the silent judgment from the congregation. Each Sunday, she felt the eyes on her. Women whispered behind covered mouths, elders exchanged knowing glances, and some outright refused to acknowledge her presence. It was suffocating. Yet, Anita endured, determined not to crumble under their scrutiny. One evening, as they sat in their small living room, Emmanuel reached for Anita's hand. I know this is hard for you, he said softly, but you're not alone in this journey. Anita bit her lip. I just feel like I'm pretending. Like any moment now, someone will call me out. Emmanuel smiled. We all have pasts, Anita. It's not about where we've been, but where we are willing to go. For the first time in weeks, Anita felt a flicker of hope. Maybe she could really do this. Maybe she could belong here. But just as she began to let her guard down, an unexpected visitor shattered the fragile peace. It was Stella, the same woman who had once lured Anita into the world of hookups now stood in the doorway of the church, her face twisted with amusement. Well, 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 she drawled, crossing her arms. Madam First Lady, who would have thought? Anita's stomach twisted. Stella, what are you doing here? I came to see if the rumors were true, Stella laughed. You? A pastor's wife? What a joke. Emmanuel, who had been listening from a distance, stepped forward. Is there a reason you came here, miss? Stella's eyes flickered to him. I just wanted to remind dear Anita here that she may play church all she wants, but she can't erase her past. Anita felt her world crashing. The congregation, the respect she had started earning, the love she had found, everything seemed to crumble. But before she could break, Emmanuel spoke firmly. The past is just that, the past. My wife is not the woman you used to know. Stella scoffed. We'll see about that. As she walked away, Anita trembled. Emmanuel, what if she tells everyone? Emmanuel pulled her into a reassuring embrace. Then we will stand firm. You are not who you used to be, and no one can take that away from you. That night, as Anita lay in bed staring at the ceiling, she realized that the real battle wasn't with her past. It was with herself. Could she truly embrace this new life, despite the shadows still lurking? Days passed, but Anita couldn't shake the fear that Stella's words had planted in her heart. She knew the church community would never fully accept her if they found out about her past. The whispers had already begun, hushed conversations, disapproving side glances, and murmurs whenever she entered the room. Pastor Emmanuel noticed her withdrawal. At night, she tossed and turned in bed, haunted by the fear that everything she had built with him would soon crumble. Anita, he said one evening as they sat in the dimly lit living room, I see the weight you are carrying, but you must remember, your past does not define you, God does. She gave a sad smile. I want to believe that, Emmanuel. I really do. But people don't forget so easily. Before he could reassure her, their housekeeper knocked frantically on the door. Pastor, you need to come to the church. There's a problem. Without hesitation, they rushed to the church. As they entered, they saw a crowd gathered, whispering and pointing at a woman standing boldly at the altar. It was Stella. Pastor, she called out, her voice echoing through the sanctuary. I think the church deserves to know the kind of woman you married. Gasps filled the air. Anita felt her heart drop to her stomach. This was it, the moment she had dreaded. Pastor Emmanuel, calm as ever, stepped forward. Go ahead, speak, he said firmly. Stella smirked. Your wife, the so-called pastor's wife, was a prostitute. A heavy silence fell over the congregation. Some members shook their heads in disbelief, while others exchanged knowing glances. The judgment Anita had feared was now fully unleashed. She wanted to run, to disappear. But Emmanuel took her hand and held it tightly. Yes, he said, his voice unwavering. Anita had a past that she is no longer bound by. But let me ask you all, how many of us are truly without sin? The church murmurs died down. Everyone watched him intently. Did Jesus not dine with sinners? Did he not forgive the woman caught in adultery? Did he not redeem Saul, the persecutor, and make him Paul, the great apostle? He looked around, his gaze meeting every judgmental face. We preach redemption, yet when it happens before us, we refuse to accept it. Silence, then a murmur, then something unexpected. Sister Grace, one of the women who had once gossiped about Anita, stood up. Pastor, I judged her, I looked down on her, but I see now that if God could forgive me for my hidden sins, then who am I to condemn her for her past? A few more members nodded, then another voice spoke up. We are all saved by grace. Tears filled Anita's eyes. Could this really be happening? Then, slowly, one by one, people began to applaud. Some stood, moved by the pastor's words. Stella, realizing her plan had backfired, scoffed and stormed out of the church. But Anita no longer cared. That day marked a new beginning, not just for her, but for the entire congregation. Anita no longer walked with shame. She embraced her story and used it as a testimony. She started working with young women, mentoring them, guiding them away from the path she once walked. Her past was no longer her prison. It was proof of her redemption. And in the end, love, grace, and the power of true transformation had the final say.
No matter where you are in life, your past does not define you. Your choices do. Anita's story teaches that transformation is possible if you are willing to take the right steps. Society will judge, but you must stay focused on your growth, proving to yourself, not others, that you can rise above your past. Love should be based on character, not just history, and true forgiveness is the key to freedom, whether forgiving yourself or others. Change is never easy, but with persistence and the right support, it leads to a life of purpose and fulfillment. Surround yourself with people who believe in your growth. Take action toward your goals, and never stop striving to be the best version of yourself. The power to change is in your hands. What will you do with it? Thanks for watching. If you're inspired by this story, kindly show us some love by subscribing to this channel. Press the notification bell so you don't miss a thing. You can also share your thoughts or experience in the comment section, like the video, and share. See you soon.